Thank you for joining me in part 4 of A History of Manitowoc's Evergreen Cemetery. In today's tour of Evergreen Cemetery, we will be looking at the columbariums and the receiving vault, J. Ross Moore and his automatic clothes dryer, two servicemen from Manitowoc that gave their lives during the Vietnam War, the maintenance shop, and the child baby section of Evergreen Cemetery. So let's be on our way to the columbariums. The columbariums we are looking at are relatively new to the cemetery, being installed in 2007. They are located on the main road into the cemetery and just west of the old chapel. The columbariums is a structure, often a wall or building designed to hold cremated remains in individual niches or compartments. They can be found in various settings, including cemeteries, funeral homes, churches, and even memorial gardens. Columbariums can be either indoors or outdoors, and they come in various shapes and styles to suit different preferences and space requirements. The first columbarium was put in place in 2007, and a second one was added later. When these two are nearing capacity, there is space designed for two additional units. These two units are 100% granite, and each space allows for up to two sets of cremains to be placed inside. The area here where we are located is referred to by the cemetery as Harmony Haven. Before the columbarium area could be completed, a structure would have been here for nearly 150 years had to be dismantled. That structure was called the receiving holding vault. The receiving holding vault was designed to store the bodies of recently deceased during the cold winter months when the ground was so frozen that below ground burials could not be accomplished. The receiving holding vault at Evergreen Cemetery may well have been a homegrown design, as I was unable to find a picture of anything like it. I was also unable to find a photo of the one that was located on this spot. So, to give you some idea of what it looked like, with my limited art skill, I created two pictures from memory. As you can see, it had a sloping dome shape. The wooden doors in front were also kept locked, so I was never able to peek inside, and I was unfortunately not here when the vault was removed. Many receiving vaults were dug out on the inside so that the caskets placed inside were stored below ground level to help preserve the remains of those when the warm spring weather came around. Once again, I'm not sure if the vault at Evergreen had this feature. When the area was concreted for the new columbarium area, they did not take down the large trees that once surrounded the original receiving holding vault. So, by looking at the trees, we have some sense of the size of the receiving holding vault. The receiving holding vault ceased to be used when the cemetery began acquiring backhoes that could dig graves when the ground was frozen hard. Today, the columbarium has taken the place of the once majestic, if not stately, receiving holding vault. And just for your information, one can own one of these above ground burial compartments for a mere $3,000. J. Ross Moore, a brilliant and dedicated engineer, had an idea in his head that kept going round and round and refused to go away. That idea was to create an automatic clothes dryer for the everyday housewife, a labor saving device that would cut hours of labor off the chore of doing the weekly laundry. Mr. Moore was born August 22nd, 1886, at Villanova, Canada, to Thomas and Mary Moore. He attended primary school at Villanova and then studying engineering at Hamilton Collegiate Institute in Hamilton, Ontario. At the age of 16, Moore's parents moved to Devil's Lake, North Dakota, where they purchased a farm and began the hard life of farmers on the plains of North Dakota. J. Ross made the move with his parents, and in addition to helping his father on the family farm, took employment as a mechanic in a Devil's Lake automobile garage. Now, Devil's Lake, North Dakota, was well known for its cold winter weather. Cold, well, that doesn't actually come close to describing what it felt like when the temperature dropped to a minus 40 degrees below zero. It was during one of these cold spells that J. Ross observed his mother trying to hang freshly washed clothes on an outside clothesline. The work was brutal, and before the clothes made it to the line, it froze in her hands. It was at this moment that J. Ross, feeling his mother's pain, decided to create a device that dried clothes indoors. His engineering mind went to work as ideas for the device came and went. On October 10th, 1907, J. Ross married Arvilla Horman at Ramsey, North Dakota, and by 1910, the couple had two children and were operating a farm at Lake Ramsey. By 1916, the couple and now four children had returned to Devil's Lake to take over the family farm. During this entire time, J. Ross never gave up the idea of creating an electric drum style tumble clothes dryer. He didn't just sit around and think of possible ideas. He actually put together a number of prototypes, but the process was not as simple as one might think. By 1920, Moore and his wife had given up farming in North Dakota. The family, now with five children, moved to Erie, Pennsylvania, where he took employment as an engineer with the Lowell Manufacturing Company. Now, the Lowell Manufacturing Company was not just another company, it was a leader in laundry equipment. It was here that Moore was given the time and resources to put together the various ideas he had formulated over a 30-year period. In 1930, Moore and his family moved to Minneapolis, Minnesota, where he went into business for himself. It was here that he finally perfected and built an electric dryer which sent warm, dry air through tossed laundry. He said in an interview years later that it looked like a crude drum, but it dried clothes. The hard part now was to find a company that was willing to produce his tumble dryer. As he said in his interview, manufacturers took a dim view of the contraption, stating such things just didn't sell. Luck was with him, at least for a short time. In 1935, Moore found a backer, and together they created a corporation, the Universal Dryer Company. But before the company could begin production, the backer passed away, leaving Moore with a dryer that worked, but no money to produce it. Then, in 1937, the Hamilton Manufacturing Company of Two Rivers, Wisconsin, heard of his dryer. The president of Hamilton's, H.C. Goran, and another executive went to Minneapolis to investigate. Goran and his associate liked what they saw, and after negotiations, Moore gave Hamilton Manufacturing the exclusive right to produce the dryer he developed. With the agreement, Moore became Hamilton's engineering research consultant for his and all future dryers produced by Hamilton's. For Moore, it was a win-win. He basically had a good paying lifetime job and would see his invention produced and placed on the world market. J. Ross Moore moved his family to Two Rivers and went to work. The following year, 1938, The first model, the June Day, the first successful drum-style tumble dryer, hit the market. Up until that time, Hamilton Manufacturing had produced equipment and cabinets for printers, dentists, surgeons, draftsmen, laboratories, and libraries. For them, the addition of a metal dryer was not difficult. By 1941, the company had produced and sold 6,000 June Day dryers, but production came to an end in 1942 when Hamilton was required to produce items needed for World War II. Production of their dryer line did not resume until 1946, and for many years, Hamilton Manufacturing was the only company in the nation producing the tumble style dryer. Moore, with other engineers, continued to upgrade the Hamilton dryer. Soon, both a gas and an electric model dryer were on the market. By 1959, sales of the Hamilton dryer had hit the 1 million mark, and in 1963, the Hamilton line included 10 dryer models and 9 washers. J. Ross Moore retired from Hamilton's in the 1950s. He and his wife moved to Manitowoc, where he became involved in community affairs such as the Optimists, Shriners, and Masons. Moore passed away on October 18th, 1963, at age 77. He and his wife are both buried at Evergreen Cemetery in Manitowoc. Hamilton Manufacturing con- discontinued their washer dryer line in 1968 and sadly closed their doors for good in 2012 after being in business for over 130 years. The large factory and office buildings were demolished, and a city park now sits on that site. Today, the modern day clothes dryer is not thought of as anything special. It's just another common household appliance used by almost every housewife in America. Yet, if it were not for J. Ross Moore, we might still be hanging our clothes on outside clotheslines. There are probably over 1 billion clothes dryers in use worldwide, all thanks to Mr. Moore and his wife, who lie peacefully buried in a cemetery in Manitowoc. We're now looking at the gravestone of Mr. Charles Wimp, a veteran of the U.S. Cavalry during the American Civil War. The stone is in the shape of a saddle because a horse saddle on a gravestone is a powerful military symbol of a one-time mounted soldier who will never ride again. Then there's always the popular likeness in bronze. A person's likeness in bronze allows a loved one's memory to be captured from a photograph or other reference. This is a more personal and lifelike alternative to an engraved name, offering a tangible way for family and friends to connect with their memory. So, what does a dove on a gravestone indicate? A dove on a headstone most commonly symbolizes peace, purity, and the soul's journey to heaven. It can also symbolize hope, as its connection with the biblical story of Noah's Ark, where a dove brought back an olive branch, signaling the end of the flood and the promise of a new beginning. The dove can also mean a life cut short or heavenly pause. Our next soldier that gave his life for a country is the story of Second Lieutenant Barry Charles Killenbens. Barry was born at Melbourne, Australia, to Mr. and Mrs. Wallace Killenbens on May 1st, 1945. He came with his parents to Manitowoc in 1946. Barry attended St. Mary's and Holy Innocents parochial schools and graduated from Lincoln High School in 1963. He then attended the University of Wisconsin Manitowoc County campus and then the University of Wisconsin-Madison. On September 3rd, 1966, Barry married Karen Alice Hornick in a ceremony at St. Anne Catholic Church, Francis Creek, Wisconsin. In 1967, Barry enlisted in the United States Army. He attended and graduated from Officer Candidate School at Fort Benning, Georgia. After Officer Candidate School, he was commissioned a second lieutenant in the U.S. Army and was stationed at Fort Dix, New Jersey. In December 1968, Barry received orders for Vietnam. He departed the U.S. later that month. Arriving in Vietnam, Barry was assigned to Company A, 3rd Battalion, 11th Light Infantry Brigade, 11th Infantry Regiment of the 32nd Division, the famous Americal Division. On January 18, 1969, Barry wrote his first and last letter to his wife. The following day, he was with his company and located in the small Vietnamese village of Long Rin, Quy Nhon Province, when the village was attacked by a large Viet Cong force. During the fighting, one of Barry's men was hit and seriously wounded just outside his bunker. Barry made 2 attempts to rescue the wounded soldier, but was driven back each time. On his 3rd attempt, he was hit and would die of his wounds within minutes. It took only 2 days for notification of his death to reach his parents and wife. His remains arrived in Manitowoc on January 28, 1969. His service was held at Holy Innocents Catholic Church on January 30th, followed by burial at Evergreen Cemetery. A military honor guard from Fort Sheridan, Illinois, conducted military rites at graveside. A year following the death of her husband, Karen Killenbenz would marry Dennis Stipel, another well-known and respected Vietnam vet. The couple would have 2 children. The story of our last soldier, one who gave his life in the Vietnam War, is that of Todd Ronald Jackson. Todd was born August 22, 1947, in Manitowoc to Ray and Olive Jackson. He attended Manitowoc schools and graduated from Lincoln High School with the class of 1965. After schooling, Todd enlisted in the U.S. Army on November 21st, 1965. Upon completing his basic and advanced training, he was transferred to Germany, where he would serve for the next year and a half. On June 13th, 1967, Todd requested assignments to Vietnam. He arrived in Vietnam on June 22nd, 1967, and was assigned to the 3rd Squad, U.S. Airborne 4th Cavalry, Long Range Reconnaissance Patrol Detachment. Todd would serve in Vietnam for the next 7 months, until the morning of January 29th, 1969. He was on patrol with his long-range reconnaissance unit in the Hobo Woods near Ben Dong, Vietnam, when they came under attack. Todd was wounded early in the battle, but continued to expose himself to hostile fire on numerous occasions to point out enemy positions to gunships flying directly overhead. In an attempt to retrieve a radio from his fallen squad leader's position, in order to more effectively call fire in on the enemy, he was fatally wounded. His body was returned to Manitowoc on February 13, 1968. Services were held at Sacred Heart Catholic Church with burial in Evergreen Cemetery. Military rights were accorded by a special U.S. Army detachment from Fort Sheridan, Illinois, and the U.S. Army Reserve Center of Manitowoc. On Memorial Day, May 31st, 1968, at a very special ceremony at Evergreen Cemetery, Captain Clinton Vance of Fort Sheridan presented Todd's parents, Ray and Olive Jackson, with Todd's posthumous awards: the Silver Star for Gallantry in Action, Bronze Star Medal, Purple Heart, Good Conduct Medal, and Combat Infantryman's Badge. They were also told that just days before his death, Todd had earned his Green Beret. Section L of Evergreen Cemetery is undoubtedly the saddest section in the cemetery. Included in Section L is what is referred to as the child baby section. The cemetery has designated this area for the burial of babies and children under the age of 10. This area was established by the cemetery sometime around the early 1920s, as a number of the graves in this area date back that far. The burial lots in this area are 29 inches by 48 inches. Now, this does not mean that young children or babies cannot be buried elsewhere in the cemetery, but the advantage of using this area is that the cost for a grave site is only about half the price of a full-size lot somewhere else in the cemetery. As one walks around the cemetery and looks carefully, you will see babies and children graves in every section of the cemetery. And we must remember that children have been buried in Evergreen Cemetery since the 1850s. There are a number of rules and regulations for burials in this area. And if you are interested, you can look them up on the internet by typing in Child Baby Section Evergreen Cemetery or calling the Manitowoc Cemetery and Parks Department. Our last building of interest in the cemetery is the maintenance shop. Up until 1993, the majority of the equipment and vehicles needed to maintain the cemetery were stored in the old 1918 chapel located at the front of the cemetery next to the sexton house. The old chapel is of moderate size and by 1993 had run out of room for the new and larger vehicles and equipment. It was at that time that the city decided to construct a 6,000-foot metal building. The building has four large overhead doors on its south side and one on its north side, so that when needed, vehicles can be driven straight through. Much of the maintenance work performed on vehicles and equipment done by the cemetery employees is carried out in this area. To the far or east side of the maintenance shop are located the public restrooms for the cemetery. The restrooms are open to the public Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Also in this area of the building is the maintenance office for the cemetery. There is also a smaller office located next to the maintenance office, and if my memory serves me right, that was once the main office for the cemetery where business was conducted and records kept. That office has now been moved to the Manitowoc City Hall, 900 Quay Street. Maintaining the large 80-acre cemetery is an ongoing yearly cycle. Starting in spring, the grounds are cleaned of any debris left over from the harsh winter months. In summer, grass is cut and trees trimmed when needed. In fall, leaves are collected and removed from the cemetery, and in winter, the 3.5 miles of roads in the cemetery are cleared. Back in the early days of the cemetery, the remains of those to be buried in the cemetery were stored in the winter vault next to the chapel. Today, with the heavy duty equipment maintained by the cemetery, burials take place all year long. It is without a doubt that Evergreen Cemetery is a beautiful and tranquil location and takes skilled hands to maintain that appearance. The next time you're in Evergreen Cemetery and see one of the groundkeepers hard at work, take time to thank him or her for their efforts. This concludes part 4 of our tour of Evergreen Cemetery. I want to thank you for joining me on this adventure. I will shortly be adding part 5 as we continue a tour of this beautiful cemetery. I hope you will join me at that time. Thank you.